around the House. Mr Chair.
Mr Chair.
I'm calling Dr David Clark.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Talofa lava. Recognise that it's Samoan Language Week, and it's a joy to be able to open with a greeting of that nature. Mr Chair, I, like my colleagues, was expecting the budget debate to continue much longer this evening, and myself actually was expecting to speak into the budget debate, so I am a little disappointed that Mr Brownlee saw fit to change the order of events from what had previously been agreed. And one might speculate, now is probably not the time to do it, but one might speculate that perhaps that was because the debate was not going in the direction that the government wanted. I understand there was some discussion of school ratios, obviously a hot topic right now. And we've seen where the budget debate has been so far as we passed legislation on that picked the pockets of paperboys and did asset testing thresholds. We can see there's no big ideas in the budget, no big ideas in the budget debate, and we can perhaps conjecture that in order to get away from that painful, slow torture the government backbenchers present are facing as they realise that their ministers and their people on the front bench have few ideas as to how to grow this country and how to grow this economy. They don't seem to have the pro-growth policies that we might expect from a government, Mr Speaker. So before I get too far into the budget debate, which is not in fact the matter before us right now, I want to refer to the regulatory impact statement on this bill, which it took some time to locate. There is not one on the table in the centre of the floor of Parliament. So I went to the Bills office and asked whether they had a copy of the regulatory impact statement, because I'm wondering what kind of costs this legislation might carry for New Zealand as we put an extra burden on those responsible at the Commerce Commission for collecting further information. And, Mr Chair, it was actually quite hard to find any kind of regulatory impact statement. The one I did locate in the end on the internet was one prepared by the Ministry of Economic Development in 2010, and it went through the range of options before the committee and discussed their pros and cons. Now, I'm not sure, Mr Chair, whether there is a further regulatory impact statement. I realise I'll come back to the matter of the bill, but in terms of Part 1, I would very much like to know what the costs are that are involved, Mr Chair, and wonder whether the Minister in due course could point us in the right direction. Mr Chair, this bill has as an objective to increase, to facilitate...
We're not on Part 2, we're on Part 1.
Part 1, Mr Chair.
You can't talk about fees, we're on Part 1.
Sorry?
We're on Part 1. Fees come into Part 2.
The fees,
Yeah,
Mr Chair.
Part 2.
Yeah, well, in terms of MFAT, I'll come to the MFAT issue, because one of the things raised in the regulatory impact statement that I did find was around the recommendations of that the Commission consult with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if it received a request for its assistance that has significant international trade consequences for New Zealand. Sorry? 99H. The Select Committee did write in these provisions, Mr Chair, but the question on my mind now is whether, in fact, we will have the specialist skills in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to service these requests, because we know that there's been $120 million spent on a restructure that has been bungled, gutting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and certainly bringing morale there to an all-time low. And this is an important issue, Mr Chair, because we are attempting here to make sure that our international trade practices and obligations are met, but also that our New Zealand exporters are in a position, and our competitive companies are in a position to be competitive, Mr Chair, both to comply but also to be in a competitive position. And so if we take an example, if we looked at competing delivery companies in two different countries, some might in New Zealand rely on young people to deliver items. They may be earning under $45 a week, these young people, and they may be facing an increased tax burden in New Zealand, the paper boys and paper girls of this country. Mr. Chair.
For Nikki Kay,
Question be now put.
I'll hear from Raymond Ho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like some of